Hello and welcome to the 8th experiment of the JavaScript lab, which is basically PHP and SQL. So we're going to be using the SQLyog here, and we are required to create a login page, a sign up page if you're not already having an account, and also a reset password page if you've forgotten your password for your already existing account. So this is a basic page where we allow the user to enter his username, his password, and submit this. So if it exists in the database and if the details are entered correctly, it produces a successful login page, or it shows an error. So we have two links that are provided, that is register.php. If you're not already signed up, you can go to the register.php by clicking the link. If you've forgotten your password, you can click this link and reset your password. So let us check the validate login page, where I'm establishing a connection to the database using the mysql_connect, which is basically followed by the host name, the username, the password, and the database name. So this is my query to retrieve the data. Basically, I have the username variable, and I'm using super global variable $_request. Irrespective of the post and get, we will receive the value for this stored in this. So this is the name which we provided in the form, and for password as well we provided a name in the form, gets stored in these two variables. Now this is a normal SQL query, which is select username, password from company, where username is equal to the $username, that is the variable out here. Whatever username the user provides, it should check that against the database, and similarly the password for that username. And this variable stores the result of the query, mysqli_query, the connection to the database, the query. And if the number of rows of this result is equal to 1, we get a success, else we echo an error. So now moving on to the register of the sign up page. If you do not have an account, so this is the page for the sign up. We enter a username, password, we retype the password confirmation and email address. This is to sign up, and these details will be stored in the database, something like this. Yeah, something like this. So we have already a few entries right here, and this I have entered before just to test if we are able to display the values. And also on the sign up page, you're supposed to display the already registered users as well. So we have a look at that as well. So I've created a normal form, and you can see the action is going to validate it. I'm going to later validate the sign up page as well. So that is redirected into validate8.php, and this division will store the list of people that have already registered. So I'm establishing a connection again to the database right here. This is to display the people who are already registered. So I perform my query, which is select all the details from the table company in my database, and I use the mysql_query function to run the query in the database. And if my row is equal to mysql_fetch_row, and pass this result inside as a parameter, I'm echoing $row of 0. Basically, row stores the result of the query as an array, and so the database entries will be stored as an array. So my row will now contain these as array. For each query it will have an array. So when I do row of 0, it means the username. So I'm only supposed to display these three values on my page, because these are the registered users. I don't need a row of 1, neither do I need row of 2. So let's take a look at validate8. So here I again establish the connection to the database. I'm using the isSetRequestSubmit, which was the page on our sign up page. So we have something called submit. So this is if isSet $_request_submit, and we perform these operations where I have the username inside this variable, and this basically to check against duplicates. So if a duplicate exists, that is if the number of rows is greater than or equal to 1, I create a session variable to display an error message, which is the username already exists in the database, and I relocate back to the register.php, because you need to enter your details once again with the different username. So in register, I've created a session where I start the session, and if the session variable is not set, then I'm echoing if the session variable is set, I'm echoing the error message, my error message being this, the username already available. And if I have no duplicates, that is if it's a unique username, then I perform a usual operation of basically inserting into company username, password, email, the values, pass the variables, and I use the MySQL_query to query the database and to enter these values, basically enter this values back into the database, and I'm using the header function to force change the URL to index.php, that is to the login page. So once you have signed yourself up, you can go to the login page and you can log in. And moving on to the final page is a reset password page. So in case you forget your password but you remember username and your email address, all you can do is you can take the username, the email, and the password and the new password back. You can enter a new password and you can click the reset password button, and that will this is a form again which redirects to validate reset.php. So on submitting this form, you reach this PHP page where I'm establishing a connection yet again. I'm creating the username variables to store the username which is already present in the database that the user enters. He enters his correct email, and a new password will be stored in this variable that the user wishes to change. And I use a query to select all the details from company where the username and the password and the email match in the database. So once this matches, I store the result of that query in this variable using MySQL_query. I'm using the die MySQL_error, that is if there is an error, it should produce a certain error message. So if my number of rows in this result is equal to 1, I'm going to update company. I'm going to set password to the new password, that is a single row exists with these details that the user has entered, and I'm going to change the username. I'm going to change the password, that is password is equal to new password, where username is equal to the entered username by the user. And finally MySQL_query to update the query. Once this is done, I echo password has changed successfully, else a wrong username or email was entered. So let's get a look at this. So this is our 8th experiment. You just get a FileZilla client ready. So once this is done, we go to the page. So as you can see, we can log in. So let's first, since we don't have an account, let's go through the entire process where I sign up. So let's say I've entered username as Mihir. I enter a certain password. I enter an email ID, that is gmail.com. So as you can see, we have the list of people already registered. So in our database, we have these 3 people, and that has been displayed successfully here. So when I click on submit, you can see I've submitted my details. So if I go back to the database and I refresh it, you can see I have the entry right here, the username, the password, and the email. Here I can log in. Let's say I forgot my password, so I go to enter my current username, my current email, and let's say we want to change the password to Mihir123. So that is a new password. So once I click on reset password, you can see the password has been changed successfully. We go to our database and we check that the password has indeed changed. So let's try logging in now, and let's see what that yields us. So we go to the login page. Remember, the password has been changed. When we log in, you can see success. Now what happens if we try to create an account that is already entered? So irrespective of the values I enter here, so as we know that Mihir already exists in our database, so it should show us an error if we try to submit these details. And you can see the error is flashed here. Username is already available in the database, so you cannot use it. So this brings us to the end of the 8th experiment. The output has been verified. Thank you.